far are you going?
About 30 years.
So that teaser trailer was released almost 40 years ago, and just from those two short clips you can see why Michael J. Fox was a much better fit for the role. So this week, 39 years ago, Back to the Future was released into the UK cinemas. So I thought I would have a quick look at what happened back then.
How old are you?
I'll be 24 very soon, or I probably just was 24.
Depending on
when you
how you are viewing this particular show at this moment. Does the onset of these years mean anything to you?
Not really. In one more year, I'll be able to rent a car without a whole lot of hassle. But
you know, you do have that look where I'm sure you get carded for your ID still.
Just about everywhere, yeah.
Are you offended by that?
No, I actually kind of like it. You know, it's sometimes you feel like you just want to paste it on your forehead and walk through life with it. But other than that, no, it's nice. It's better than people thinking I'm somebody's dad or something.
Yeah, or getting hit with heavy rocks.
Than being dragged behind a snowplow.
Now you have come out of this enormous schedule of shooting Family Ties and shooting the new Steven Spielberg movie.
Right.
And you were doing them both at the same time?
Right. I would do Family Ties in the daytime. My driver would come and pick me up around 9 o'clock, and I'd work on Family Ties from about 10 to about 6:30, and then the driver would come and pick me up and take me to Universal, and I would work on Back to the Future till about 2:30 in the morning. It was great. I lived.
Now, how did this happen? Did Spielberg beg you to do the movie, and you...
Yeah, on his knees. The guy came to me, and I was crying. It was terrible. I was saying, he said, Amy, the baby, and he needs me. And so, no.
I'm counting on you, Fox.
Yeah, he said, please, I need the hit. I need a hit. No, he's a good friend of Gary Goldberg's, who produces Family Ties, and apparently they came to Gary a long time ago and suggested to Gary that he would let me do it. And he said there's no way it would fit schedule-wise, and he's a very merciful man, so he didn't tell me that I was ever being considered for it, because it would have broken my heart. And then I guess it was like a Tuesday, and I went to see a taping of Sarah, which was Gary Goldberg's other show, and he called me aside, and he put the script down in front of me, and he said, Steven Spielberg wants you to do this movie, and can you start on Monday, and I'll work it out so you can do both jobs. And I said, yeah, great, good. I went home, he said, read it, and see if you like it. I said, oh, Gary, I'm gonna hate it, I'm sure. So I went home and I read it, and I called him up at about 2 in the morning and said, call Steven, don't let him change his mind. Don't let him change his mind, because I want to do it. And it just happened. It was a matter of about 5 days, and I was on the set.
How are you dealing with the early word on this movie? The early word is spectacular. It must be kind of frightening, yes.
Yeah, it's really scary. It's the same thing with Family Ties. When we did the pilot for that, everyone was saying, oh, this is a hit. This is, and I just thought, shut up, don't, shut up, Not that I ever said that to anybody. I don't say it to anybody who's talking about this movie. I mean, I think it's great that they're all excited, but it is a little scary because they're only giving us one option, and that is to win. And what if you don't win?
Will you be the same guy?
Yeah.
Will you handle it well?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I don't know. I kind of what I call a healthy paranoia, and so anyway, so I don't think I'll ever get to the point where I'm saying, I get this movie, this stuff, because I think I'd stop being creative, and I think I'd start being a jerk, and I don't think I could really live with it.
Have you ever risked becoming arrogant?
I don't know. It's hard for me to say. It's hard to be objective. I know that I really try not to, or don't even really have to try. I think, if I were to go home, that's always the best judge. If I was to go back to Canada and try and play any kind of trip about being a big Hollywood star or whatever, I think I get a bop in the head and like a lawnmower in my hands, like that. Be like, rake the leaves, star.
It's a film about time travel. The vehicle, a nuclear-powered DeLorean. It's a film about imagination. The mad scientist is Christopher Lloyd. And it's a film about destiny. Michael J. Fox stars as Marty McFly, the kind of hip high school senior who can't imagine life without MTV. When a sudden twist of technology sends him back to 1955, Marty not only wanders into a world without rock and roll, he bumps into the teenagers who will one day be his parents. But Marty has accidentally tampered with history and must somehow set things straight before getting back to the future. A pretty funny and thought-provoking premise, and if it at all sounds very Spielberg-esque, there's a good reason.
He was always there if we ever got into trouble, and you can't have anyone better in that position, I don't think, than Steven Spielberg.
As much as the movie has the Spielberg touch, it also has the Zemeckis.
I love working with Bob because he's possessed, you know? Like this movie, I mean, he must wake up in the morning, it's just like, the movie.
Back to the Future was originally scheduled to open late July, but when MCA President Sid Sheinberg saw the rough cut, he liked it so much he begged Zemeckis to rush it into theaters by next week. And while no one can accurately predict the future, many are predicting that Back to the Future has the makings of a summer sizzler.
It's just got everything in it.
Whoever sees it, I think most people are going to really have a good time and get their money's worth, which is just a wonderful thing, you know? It's like, I definitely got my $5.50 or $6 worth, you know?
Back to the Future was released in the United States and Canada on the 3rd of July 1985, ahead of the Independence Day holiday weekend. It was released to generally favourable reviews, but let's see what the miserable gits of Siskel and Ebert thought.
A teenage time travel adventure, Back to the Future. It's another Steven Spielberg production.
This is more serious than I thought. Apparently your mother is amorously infatuated with you instead of your father.
Get my reaction to Back to the Future out right away. Along with a very different Prizzi's honor, this is my favorite film of the summer movie season. If I had the ability to make lighthearted pictures for the teen and young adult market, I'd hope I'd have the ability to make a film as enjoyable as Back to the Future. I really think it's that good. Back to the Future is a time travel movie, a category I usually hate because, you know, they're never really going to change things when they go back in the past, because that would mean that the future that we saw at the beginning of the film would have had to have been a lie, right? So there's no suspense there. But, and I won't dare say how, Back to the Future managed to beat that problem, and it fooled me and it delighted me in so doing. The time travel comes about when a high school kid played Michael J. Fox from the TV show Family Ties bumps into his good friend, a wacky scientist, at the local mall. And of course the experiment is the time travel, and I love that touch, the DeLorean motor car, as we see right there.
A car that was ahead of its time.
Very good, Rod. That was Christopher Lloyd as the scientist, and he's pretty good in a convincing variation on Jerry Lewis's Nutty Professor. This time machine does work. It transports young Marty back to 1955, to before he was born, to where he wants to set up a date, it turns out, between, get this, his mother-to-be and his father-to-be. But his mom would rather go out with him. Neat idea. Yeah, it's heavy and it's funny. Just hope you got it there. Those two people that he was trying to put up together at the lockers, those were his parents as teenagers. Now, this relationship is played out in the film for laughs and for sexual danger, the relationship between him and his mother, and even at the end of this film, for some teary emotion. What would you say, if you think about it, meeting your mother as a teenager? What would you feel if you saw your parents as young people? What a thrill that would be. And this film, rather than being helter-skelter action picture, which it could have been, holds on that moment. I credit the director, Bob Zemeckis, for having the sensitivity, the smarts, to make this something bigger than just a laugh-a-minute special effects picture. There's a real heart to this film. Back to the Future has all that emotion, a most clever and funny and interesting script written by Bob Zemeckis and his partner Bob Gale. And the writing here, I think, is really the star. This script couldn't have been ruined if it had been directed by the director who did Red Sonja. If it had starred the cast of Red Sonja. So I guess I've made my point. Back to the Future receives my highest recommendation as a film.
Pretty good screenplay, and like all good screenplays and all good movies, it starts out with something of universal interest, which is, in this case, what would it be like to meet your parents, as you pointed out, when they were kids? Because I think everybody grows up thinking, my parents were never young. And the fact is, the parents, this is the secret parents have from kids, they don't think they're ever old.
Right, of course.
And so this movie plays with that paradox in such a beautiful way that it's not just a time travel picture, not just an action picture. I agree with you. It's a picture almost like Frank Capra would have made, in which the underlying message of this communication between the generations is kind of
I just hope that this,
beautiful.
I hope that this title, Back to the Future, doesn't put off adults. Or even when I said in the beginning, teen and time travel and young adult, I can't imagine anyone not liking this film. I really think this is a very special picture.
I mentioned Capra. You know the Capra picture it reminds me of? You can probably guess.
Mm-hmm.
It's a Wonderful Life.
You bet.
Because here's a case, once again, of somebody finding out through some kind of magical intervention.
But I say, what about us Brits? Back to the Future was released in the UK on December 4th, 1985, and had its London premiere with the Royals on December 3rd, 1985. So let's have a look at some of that.
Michael, your first starring role, Back to the Future, were you surprised by the impact the film had had?
Yeah, I was surprised. Well, I expected the film to do well, and when I say do well, I mean, you know, make a profit or whatever, would satisfy the studios because of the people associated with it, Stephen and whatnot. But for it to come out and do as well as it did, I mean, I don't even look at the totals anymore. It's scary.
Breathtaking they are, I tell you.
It's frightening. I mean, I'm glad I don't have to add it up, and I'm almost as glad I don't have to add it up as I am sorry that I don't get to keep it, you know.
I bet. It can't have made too much difference to your own personal fame, because you're very well known in America with your TV series, Family Ties, aren't you?
Right. Well, it's funny. It has it amazes me because a television show, when it's popular, is seen by, I don't know, 50 million people or whatever a week. A greater number of people than will ever see most movies. I mean, I think that more people see Family Ties in a night than see Jaws, will or have seen Jaws. Our producer told me that once. So you wouldn't expect it to make that much difference. Yet when you come out with a film like Back to the Future, all of a sudden it just quadruples the amount of attention you get. And I don't really understand it, but I can't honestly say that I don't like it.
Now, you replaced Eric Stoltz eventually in the role of Marty McFly. How did you feel about that? I mean, presumably you were quite pleased to get the part.
Well, I had a lot of feelings. I had real mixed emotions about it. It is, in my way of thinking, the actor's nightmare to start a project and for something to happen and to have to leave it under whatever circumstance. I wouldn't want that to happen to me. But as I talked to Stephen and Bob Zemeckis and whatnot, I found it was a very mutual thing, and they were very compassionate and very understanding in the way that they dealt with him. And when I understood that after talking to them, they weren't saying, well, you know, dump this guy and you'll come in or whatever. It was just, they spoke very highly of Eric, and that impressed me. And that made it an easier thing for me to step into.
What do you think of Steven Spielberg now?
I think he's great. I named one wing of my house after him. No,
he needs that?
No, I think he's a terrific man, a terrific filmmaker, and he is. The thing that strikes you most about him is being in his situation. He could be a Louis B. Mayer or whatever, the stereotypical mogul or whatever. He's not. He's an artist and a filmmaker and a man who likes to be surrounded with creative people, Bob Zemeckis, people like that, and give them the room to exercise their own creativity. And so he's not to make films first, buck second, and to treat people accordingly.
You had one hell of a workload when you were making this film, didn't you? Because you were making a TV series at the same time.
Right. Yeah.
How do you cope with that?
Well, it was tough doing both at the same time. But on the other hand, I kind of, when you take a challenge, when you take on something, you say you're going to do it, you have to do it.
Yeah.
And in the course of doing it, sitting back and saying, oh, geez, boy, I'm tired, I'm bushed, it's not going to do you a whole lot of good. Second of all, when you have a job that you love, you know, you show up for work and you're excited about doing it and getting on with the business of doing it. And with me, that just happened twice a day. You know, it happened in the morning and then it happened at night.
Did you sleep?
A little bit. I slept about 4 or 5 hours a night. I'd have drivers come pick me up in the morning and bring me in at night. Sometimes they'd carry me in and dump me on my bed at night. So there were a lot of people who made life easy for me and went out of their way to be understanding during that time.
Well, finally, Michael, here we are at this royal premiere. Huge, great crowd standing behind us now as we talk.
I'm not nervous at all.
What do you make of an occasion like this?
It's wonderfully exciting. I mean, it's a once in a lifetime thing. If indeed it is only once in a lifetime for me, I'll die satisfied.
So here we have the lovely Lady Diana Spencer. I sure hope her future is rosy. And there's the lovely young couple, very much in love, of course. And there is Sir Steven Spielberg, executive producer of the film. Is that Phil Collins? What's he doing there? He doesn't have a song in this film. And back to the great director with his wife, who I'm sure will be together for many years. And for the final clip, over to film pundit Basil Norman for his review.
And let's begin with Back to the Future, the Steven Spielberg production, which has broken box office records all over America and will, I suspect, do much the same thing here. It's an engaging, hugely entertaining story of a small-town American teenager, Michael J. Fox, who's transported back in time to join his parents in their own high school days. And what parents they are. Father, Crispin Glover, is the kind of spineless wimp that everybody dumps on, and Mother, Leah Thompson, is a blousy boozer. Since the rest of the family consists of a dumpy daughter and a dispirited son, you wonder how these people could ever have produced such a bright kid as young Master Fox. Now all that is before Mr. Fox finds himself back in the same town 30 years earlier. And he gets there by accident thanks to a splendidly balmy Professor Christopher Lloyd and his souped-up nuclear-powered DeLorean car, which instead of simply nipping along sniffing up the white line in the middle of the road like other DeLorean cars, has been adapted to travel in time. In 1955, the Four Aces are singing Mr. Sandman, and the film at the local cinema, which by 1985 has become a porno house, is Cattle Queen of Montana, starring B. Stanwyck and R. Reagan. And naturally, nobody will believe that in 1985, the same R. Reagan is President of the USA. So who's Vice President, they ask skeptically? Jerry Lewis? The contrast between small-town America today and small-town America yesterday are neatly observed and a constant pleasure, although of course the difference 30 years can make leads to misunderstandings. The real delight of the film is the problem facing Mr. Fox when by chance he interferes in his parents' first meeting and realises that unless he can do something to bring them together, he himself will never be born. The problem's further complicated by the fact that his 17-year-old mother fancies him and not the boy who's destined to become his father. And as all this unfolds, there comes a point about halfway through the film when you start muttering to yourself, if they finish this the way I hope they're going to finish it, they'll have got it right. And believe me, they do get it right. Michael J. Fox, who is 24 but going on 17, is very good indeed as the time traveller, and his performance is matched by that of Christopher Lloyd, whom you'll remember as Jim, the character in the TV series Taxi, who's blown his mind away with drugs. Indeed, all the cast are excellent, and so too is the witty and assured direction by Robert Zemeckis, the maker of Romancing the Stone. Of all the Christmas blockbusters now being unveiled, Back to the Future is the one I would most warmly recommend. And if by seeing it you make Steven Spielberg even richer than he is now, well, it can't be helped. It's already been established that he's a direct descendant of King Midas anyway.